Hey guys, Mike here, and in this video we're having side by side the Sony Xperia Z1, Sony's newly launched flagship, and their previous top of the line, the Xperia Z. On a first look, the Z1 looks a lot like its predecessor, but when digging deeper, you'll quickly find out that Sony actually built on top of the Z and improved many of the things I complained about back in spring when I reviewed it. Anyway, let's see what's changed and start with the exterior. The Z1 carries on from the Z with the same monolithic glass sandwich body. Shatterproof glass still covers the front and the rear faces just like on the Z, but the sides were redesigned. In fact, the Z1 now sports a more prominent metallic frame, and that on one side makes it more robust, but on the other makes the entire body bulkier. Having the two one next to the other and actually grabbing them in hand will quickly show you that the Z1 has grown both in size and in weight. In fact, the Z1 is massive when compared not only with the Z, but with other premium Android handsets, and almost as heavy as the Galaxy Note 3, which packs a much larger screen. Because of that, the Z1 is clearly not for everyone. This aside, both the Z1 and the Z are IP certified. Still, the Z meets the IP57 certification, thus it can only be submerged in water up to 1 meter deep, while the Z1 meets the IP58 requirements, which means that it's water resistant beyond that 1 meter. A minor detail, but one that might matter to some of you. Still, none of these two is a truly underwater device, but they should do just fine for a day at the pool or at the beach. However, you should know that you won't be able to use the screens while having the phone submerged, and here's where the Z1 steps in front with a dedicated shutter button, great for taking pictures in this case. Of course, in order to be waterproof, most ports and cuts on these two handsets are covered by either some plastic flaps or some membranes. However, on the Z1, the headphone jack, the one that I care most about, is accessible, and that was not the case for the older Z. Anyway, you do get the same buttons and connectors on the two smartphones, except for the shutter key mentioned above, including a micro USB port and a micro SD card reader. Both phones also offer a notification light. On the Z it was tiny and placed on top of the screen. On the Z1 is a tad larger and integrated within the earpiece. Speaking of that, both the Z and the Z1 aren't great when it comes to call quality, due to the fact that the earpiece and the microphones are water isolated, and that makes you and the other person at the end of the line sound somewhat muted. Also, the speakers aren't great on either of these two, but the Z1 does pack an improved solution. The Z offered a tiny speaker placed on the right lower edge, extremely easy to cover with your hand during everyday use. On the Z1, the speaker hides behind the puncture grill on the lower side of the phone. It's still not very loud and can still be covered accidentally, but only when using the phone in landscape mode. Anyway, let's move on and turn our attention on the screen. That was, in my opinion, the biggest issue with the Xperia Z, a rather subpar screen with mediocre viewing angles. Luckily, this was addressed by the Z1. Both phones pack 5-inch displays with Full HD TFT panels. However, the Z1 bundles Sony's Triluminous and X-Reality technologies. The panel is bright, clear, and paints popping colors, and the viewing angles, while still not perfect, are a big step forward from its predecessor, as the content no longer fades away with even the slightest of tilts. Thus, the superior screen tremendously improves the everyday experience you'll be getting with the Z1, but the hardware and to some extent the software have their roles in here as well. In fact, the Xperia Z1 packs the latest generation Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 series hardware platform, while the older Z was motorized by a slower Snapdragon Pro processor with poorer graphics as well. As a result, the Z1 clearly outscores the Z in benchmarks, and in fact is one of the snappiest Android devices I've ever tested. The rather clean version of Android installed on it sure helps. The Z1 comes with Jelly Bean 4.2.2 and, correct me if I'm wrong, but you get the same version of Android on the Z as well these days. The interface is lightly tweaked on both handsets, with some graphical changes like the notification panel, the lock screens, the themes or the small apps, applications running in pop-ups on top of other windows. You also get a few bundled apps and widgets, mostly Xperia services or doorways to Sony's own content stores. Useful if you're already a Sony client and you have other Sony devices around, but not that much otherwise. Those being said, both these phones can handle most of the things you'll throw at them. The Z1 is going to react snappier to your taps, is going to load apps faster, and is going to run some applications that might get sluggish on the Z, including games like GTA Vice City, one of the most demanding titles in the stores. In other words, the Z is still a snappy device, but the Z1 is superior no matter how you'd look at it. Anyway, the Z had another big issue, aside the screen. It could barely get you through the day on one charge. That was also fixed with the Z1, which now bundles a much larger 3000 mAh battery, as opposed to the 2330 mAh one on the Z. The Z1 can now easily go through the day with medium use and even last for 2 or maybe 3 days when making good use of those power saving options. Of course, if you're going to push it, that will change. Playing games on the Z1 with the screen at maximum brightness depletes the battery at a rate of 20% per hour. But even so, that's significantly better than what you get with the Xperia Z. Oh, and since we talk about games, I should tell you that the Z1 gets hotter than the Z while dealing with such tasks, to the point that it actually becomes uncomfortable to use. But that was expected given the hardware inside. Alright, those being said, I've kept one important aspect for the end, the cameras. Back at the beginning of the year, the Xperia Z impressed on paper with one of the most advanced camera sensors available at that moment. The Z1 does it again with a 20.7 megapixel shooter and a larger sensor than you can find on most camera phones. However, both handsets have one massive quirk. The software processing obliterates most of the details from the captured pictures, which end up as mushed up paints of color when watched closely, and not the sharp reproductions they should be. But have a look at the images and videos below and judge them for yourselves. All in all though, the Z1 is the better performer here, but it's just not as good as I was hoping when looking at the specs. Oh, and I should also mention the improved camera interface on the Xperia Z1, much more intuitive and easier to use. And of course, the dedicated shutter button that was missing on the older Z. All this being said, the Z1 is clearly several classes over the Z. Sony listened to most of our complaints and managed to address many of them, like the screen, the battery life, the tiny speaker or the difficult to access headphone jack, while adding a faster hardware and a better camera, although one that does not exactly meet its true potential. In other words, the Z1 really lacks any deal breakers that could utterly ruin the phone for a buyer, while the Z did pack a couple of those. That of course if you're fine with a large and heavy body, something I for one really struggle with. Anyway, those being said, it's time to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, and before you go, let me know in the comments down below what do you think about these two phones and what are, in your opinion, the most important improvements from one generation to the other. And of course, if you have any questions or things to add, just shoot them below. Alright, enough said. I'll see you soon, and in the meantime check out my extended coverage of the Sony Xperia Z on my channel and make sure to subscribe for my next updates if you haven't already. Later.